Once the cabinets were retrofitted, Arakawa put Al Stone and Ron Judy to work. The two began by setting up a few Donkey Kong machines in Seattle area bars. As with Al Alcorn's Pong prototype, the game was a runaway hit, bringing in around $30 daily. Word spread, and the 2,000 converted radar scope cabinets sold fast. From there, Donkey Kong quickly became one of the best-selling games of the early 80s. Between 1981 and 1983, it sold around 170,000 units, earning a revenue of nearly $2 billion. Merchandising followed quickly, with Donkey Kong toys and cereal boxes appearing on store shelves. Miyamoto produced a sequel the following year, Donkey Kong Jr., which flipped the narrative by putting players in the role of Donkey Kong as he tried to rescue his father from Mario. As with most arcade hits, a port to home consoles was inevitable. Now that he had a highly in-demand game in his pocket, Yamauchi put his business cunning to work. Atari dominated the home console market, and naturally Ray Kassar wanted to secure the rights. Yamauchi was initially receptive to this idea. With such a huge market share, a 2600 port would ensure many more copies were sold than on competing systems. While a rather underwhelming Donkey Kong port eventually made it to the 2600, Kassar initially passed on Yamauchi's offer, believing his demand that Nintendo be paid around $3 for every cartridge instead of the usual rate of 50 cents was too high. But Yamauchi knew he had a hit on his hand, maybe even a system seller. Scoffing at Kassar's lowball offer, Yamauchi approached one of Atari's competitors, Coleco. Coleco was founded in the 1930s in Hartford, Connecticut, and initially sold leather products. Indeed, their name is an acronym of sorts for Connecticut Leather Company. Pretty soon after their founding, they moved into a variety of industries and expanded their product portfolio through acquisitions. They made rubber boots for the U.S. Army during World War II. By the end of the 1970s, they sold and manufactured items as diverse as toys, inflatable swimming pools, and snowmobiles. They also started making video games. Their first product was a handheld football game, Electronic Quarterback, which came fresh on the heels of a very similar product from Mattel. They made licensing deals with several established video game developers, and specialized in making so-called tabletop or mini arcade machines, larger and more expensive than handheld devices, but still battery-powered and portable, and offering a somewhat more authentic arcade experience. They also released consoles of their own, under the Telstar line. Most of these were Pong clones, but in 1977 they showed their creativity by releasing the cartridge-based Telstar Arcade, a triangular console whose three sides featured a pair of knobs for Pong-like games, a steering wheel for racing games, and a rather realistic-looking light gun for shooting games. The system also featured triangular cartridges that were placed on top of the system and locked into place with a pin that went through the cartridge. Innovative, but ultimately not a big seller. They tried again in 1982, releasing the ColecoVision, which used a much more advanced chip than that in the Atari 2600. If they wanted to compete with Atari, they would need a hit game, preferably one that wasn't available elsewhere. Donkey Kong was that game. Yamauchi met with Coleco president Arnold Greenberg, and the two struck a deal in which Coleco would have the exclusive rights to home versions of Donkey Kong for 6 months. After that, Nintendo would be free to license the game to other companies. In addition, Coleco had to provide Nintendo with an upfront payment of $200,000, as well as royalties on every tabletop machine, and $1.40 for each ColecoVision cartridge sold. Overall, it was a deal that heavily favored Nintendo, but Coleco accepted it all the same. As Yamauchi said, they were the most hungry. The Coleco version of Donkey Kong is a pretty good adaptation of the game, much better than the one licensed by Atari. For comparison, here is what the arcade version looked and sounded like. Here is what the Coleco version looked and sounded like. And here is what the 2600 version looked and sounded like. Coleco made the bold move of bundling the game with its new system. Analysts were skeptical. Was it really a good idea to give away the best game you had? Atari and many other video game companies operated on the Gillette model. Give them the razor, sell them the blades. Systems were usually sold at cost or even a loss, with companies earning their money back by selling cartridges. Coleco sold its system for a profit. It was rather expensive, retailing at $175, $50 more than what the 2600 cost at the time. But that price included the definitive home version of one of the most popular arcade games of all time. The gambit worked, and by 1983, Coleco had sold over 1 million consoles.